just come from India, where he's been dealing with energy issues. I myself don't know a lot about energy, so I've invited one of our MEI scholars, Zubair Iqbal, to introduce Justin and to moderate the session. Zubair has spent decades working for the IMF, jetting about the Middle East, dealing with energy issues. So he's far better versed in this matter than I am. So I'd like to introduce Zubair Iqbal.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Well, actually, it's a pleasure. But it's very interesting. For about 25 years, I traveled in the region. I did umpteen missions to the oil producing countries in the Gulf. And I must admit that I came out of it not having made any difference the way they do things. It's not because they don't know what they're doing, it's because they know it too well what they're doing. And they have certain constraints against which they work. One thing that they have come to realize over time is that they have a very large carbon footprint. In fact, the largest per capita footprint in the world. And they are quite aware of it, they're quite concerned about it, not only because of its geopolitical significance, but also because of their own concerns on using energy resources more efficiently. It's, in fact, one of the reasons why they have been talking about some way of conserving energy, of introducing efficiency in its utilization. They're running into shortage, that I can tell you. Even though they're the largest producer of oil, they are running into shortages with regard to energy. It shows up in different ways, but it's there. The issues also are of environmental nature for them, and they're quite concerned about that. Not only simply because they're part of the global economy, the global society, but also because they are concerned about the well-being of their own people. They have taken a number of steps. One of those steps, of course, is that they have, for example, in Abu Dhabi, they have already allocated about $15 million to establish a completely pollution-free city. Ambitious plan, ambitious project. And at the same time, they're trying to take steps in order to introduce other ways, including like the carbon trading as a mechanism whereby they can reduce the use of energy, or at least rationalize its use, make it more efficient, be able to meet the needs of the future, as well as, quote unquote, improve the quality of life of people as well as the global economy. Now, there's one person who knows perhaps most about this, is Justin Dargin. Now, Justin Dargin, whom we are honored to welcome today to be our speaker, he's a research fellow with the Dubai Initiative at Harvard, where he specializes in international energy and energy law with a concentration on the legal framework surrounding the Gulf energy policy and energy issues, which is very important. I mean, the reality is that's where more than 40% of the petroleum-based or gas-based energy is coming from, and to that extent it's very important. Now, he has also held positions with the legal departments of Owens Corning Global Headquarters and the Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries, of course, OPEC, and as a researcher at the Oxford Institute for Energy Studies, he pioneered the first major substantive work on transnational gas trading in the form of a Dolphin project. And some of you who know about the Dolphin project was the vehicle whereby gas was to be supplied from Qatar to UAE as a mechanism which was supposed to be then extended to the entire UAE and then hooked into the international flow or transnational flow of gas. Now, he's published over 40 book chapters, tremendous for a young man like him, and articles and publications such as the Gulf Research Institute, Oil and Gas Journal, and the Middle East Economic Survey. He's the author of Dolphin Project, the development of a Gulf Gas Initiative of 2008, and the forthcoming book entitled Desert Dreams, quest for global integration Arab revolt in the Gulf Cooperation Council. Please join me in welcoming.
Okay, well, first of all, I'd like to thank the Middle Eastern Institute for inviting me to speak. I'm quite honored for this privilege, as well as I'd like to thank Zuhair for the quite enthusiastic and quite complimentary introduction. So thank you very much. Now, I would like to speak about carbon trading in the Gulf, and of course, this would seem to be a bit counterintuitive, considering all of the difficulties that we have here in the U.S. We've been attempting to implement any type of carbon regulation. Although my presentation today is going to show that not only would this be viable for the Gulf countries to implement, this would also be quite beneficial for their economies as well. Now, just to give a brief overview of the energy sector in the Gulf, we can see here that the Arabian Gulf region is home to some of the largest natural gas reserves in the world. It holds about 23% of the global total, but it only has about 8% of the global production rate. So there's very little utilization of natural gas reserves in the Gulf. And we can see here, with the figures to the right, that Qatar has about 900 trillion cubic feet of natural gas, which is the world's third largest natural gas reserves, but it's also the world's #1 liquefied natural gas exporter, and it held its position since 2006. Now, Saudi Arabia has approximately 270 trillion cubic feet. It's the world's fourth largest, and the UAE has approximately 227 trillion cubic feet, which is the world's fifth largest. And Kuwait has minimal natural gas reserves, which comes in about 63 trillion cubic feet, which is number 20 in terms of global natural gas reserves. Now, if we look at the Gulf power demand, it's increasing exponentially. Now, the GCC will need to add about 60 gigawatts of additional power between 2010 and 2015. Now, this represents about 80% of current capacity. Now, the demand growth rate for electricity in the Gulf has been a fairly robust 7.7% of annual growth from about 2007 and projected to increase until about 2015, which is the fastest rate of growth in the world. So GCC members, in order to combat this rise and to be able to have adequate electricity for their industrialization and economic modernization programs, to invest about $160 to $200 billion in the energy sector over the next several years. But the demand rates are unlikely to slow, as the GCC countries have developed huge stimulus plans in order to attempt to have some type of financial growth and economic growth during the global economic crisis that peaked in late 2008. We can see here with the graph to the right, we can see that around 2007, the GCC power rates actually were bumping up against its installed capacity. So in 2007, we saw major power outages in the Gulf region, with nearly every country except for Qatar experiencing blackouts during the peak demand season, generally during the summer. But you can see 2008, there was a slight decrease, and this was principally had to do with the chaos and fear associated with the global economic crisis and people not knowing, and particularly officials and companies not knowing what would happen. And then we see in 2009, 2010, there is a steady increase, and quite steadily the Gulf countries are going to be outstripping their capacity to provide electricity